when you have celebrities, you have a different leverage. It's going to be easier to get on stages. It's going to be easier to get phone calls answered. It's going to be easier to get interviews, even if you're executives with them. But if there's a celebrity, it changes the equation because media's relationship to celebrity is different. So even if your business relationship on your side is pretty standard, like you're going to get that reporter that you couldn't get to before. You now have new leverage.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Comms Confidential, where we're pulling back the curtain and putting those who are typically backstage right in the spotlight. I want to remind you to hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much anywhere. Today with me, I've got Ashley Jacobson from PubMatic. Ashley, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Ashley, we're all storytellers in the communications industry. We all kind of have our own history. What's your story? How did you find PR? What attracted you to the industry and got you to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I always kind of feel like a dark horse in this industry because I didn't come in. I never thought I'd be in PR actually, and communications was something that kind of found me. And I think we'll probably talk about that as we talk about my journey. But I started off actually really wanting to be in writing. I studied creative writing. I worked as a playwright. I founded my own theater company for a couple of years. But I ended up working in like corporate sponsorship for theater and for performance. And somehow through a very kind of winding road, I found myself using those skills that were about trying to convince companies to give you money for theater. You really have to be a very good storyteller, right? You really have to go in there and tell them why their brand needs to do XYZ and what that's going to be. And you have to really kind of build really strong narratives and be very persuasive. And I loved that. And then I just kind of fell into different roles that allowed me to really pursue that really strongly. And then I ended up at AMC Networks where I officially got like a communications title. I was kind of always in like a business development, sponsorship, corporate relations. These were all kind of like the fancy titles in the nonprofit world. And then AMC welcomed me into their communications world. And I realized this is what I've been doing all along. And I loved it and I continue to love it. So yeah, if you would have told me when I got out of school that I was going to be doing PR for ad tech, I would have been like, hard pass. But I actually really love it. It actually kind of uses all of the skills that I picked up along the way from, being creative, being a writer, being in business, being, on the selling something. And then, so that's kind of what brought me here. And I think what's keeping me is that it is just a really, really fun, creative environment. I don't think that people understand how in corporate America, you can kind of still really use those juices, those like really creative energy. I still get to use that every single day in this role. And so I feel like PR found me. And once it did, I was like, oh, aha, this is what I should have been doing all along.
Gotcha. So you founded a theater company? Is that what you said?
Did. I did. Right out of school-ish. When I was working at BAM, so the Brooklyn Academy of Music, so surrounded by theater, surrounded by performers, surrounded by just that creative energy. I wanted to be a playwright. I went to school for playwriting. I was writing scripts. That's where I thought I was going to get my like fancy East Village townhouse, was being a old playwright. I didn't put it together yet, but yeah. And so I met some really amazing people there. My best friend Elizabeth was working with me at BAM at the time, and she wanted to be a producer and I wanted to be a writer. And so we started working together. And our first project out the gate was really successful. We did really well. We sold out, we got recognition. And so we said, oh, we have something here. So then we went on to produce, I think, like 4 or 5 of my
Oh, wow.
plays over the next couple of years, and then a few others. We started to bring in other artists into the mix, and we would do these like 24-hour play festivals where we'd have people come in, write a play overnight, and then we'd put it up and produce it the next day. which was super exciting. And so, yeah, for like 5 or 6 years, that was my like life. And that was just
Huh.
so fun. I was writing, I was producing, and then I was working my day job at BAM, and I was, doing the like 9 to 5 corporate sponsorship, getting Bank of America, who are very generous, wonderful sponsors, to like donate to Shakespeare touring companies. So it was a really exciting time, and a really exciting creative moment. Yeah.
So you were all in on theater, all in on the creative aspect.
I was. Theater is life. Was like, yeah.
As someone with that in the family, I get it.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I get it. How did you carry those skills to the business development world
Mhm.
before going to PR? Because obviously PR, there's a little bit more of a connective tissue there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, I think a couple things happened. I think first I realized that doing the work in like BAM and even for New York Women in Television, where I was doing corporate sponsorship and all of that kind of work, corporate relations, that wasn't scratching the itch that I needed
Uh,
for being a playwright. I was like, well, it wasn't fulfilling me that way. So I kind of realized like I need to make a choice here. I either need to like double down on building a career that's going to be interesting and satisfying and move me forward, or I need to kind of abandon this and maybe go get my MFA in writing and pursue that and move to LA and write movies and like, you know what I mean? Like I was
do the thing.
straddling both worlds. Yeah, yeah. Like I was straddling both worlds, but neither were like good enough, right? Like
Uh-huh.
I wasn't successful and happy enough as a creative writer, and I wasn't successful and happy enough in my career. So when I was working for New York Women in Film and Television, which also was a great organization, actually one of the board members of that organization was from AMC Networks, and Christine Bragan, who is actually a fantastic communications professional herself, and she had an opening on her team at AMC, and she was like, you're good at this. She's like, you're good at taking what a corporation needs to hear and turning that into a really compelling narrative. I bet you would be really good at this. Um, do you want to interview for this role? And then it was kind of a dark horse application process. It wasn't an automatic like, hey, come work for me. Like I had to come in, I kind of had to prove myself. I had to prove that even though I'd never worked in a corporation before in my life, I never had marketing in my title, that I could still be director of corporate marketing for a major entertainment company,
Yeah.
right? Like I kind of had to be like, here's what you're not seeing. And so I think just being able to persuade myself into the role was like my first act of like major like self PR and self communications. And then once I was there, that started to really fill my cup in a way that what I was doing before wasn't. And
Uh-huh.
I had my baby, I got married, like the like hustle of doing theater and everything started to be less tenable. And so I just started to pour more of that energy into my role at AMC. And I discovered skills that I didn't know I had because
Yeah.
of many years, right? Like writing speeches is not very different than writing a really good script. Um, writing talking points, managing interviews, like all of these things were so I was like, I know what this is. I haven't done it this way, but I've done this before. Um, and yeah, and I just love that. And I was there for 5 years and they were great. And then the world started to change and advertising became the biggest thing that I was working on AMC was like our advertising function and working with our commercial teams there. And that was really, really exciting. And so that's kind of what brought me over to PubMatic. So it's just been this kind of like I just kind of follow my curiosities more than anything. And that's kind
Uh-huh.
of where that's kind of how it's led me here. It didn't ever feel like I was giving up something. I felt like I was just adding more tools. And so I think on paper it looks like a pivot, but it always just felt like completely natural and
Right.
completely a build upon of what I was doing before.
Gotcha. I want to get back to the AMC thing in a minute,
Yeah.
but how did you overcome that imposter syndrome? Like
Overcome?
you like you said you had to convince yourself it was your self PR, you had to sell yourself
Mhm.
moving from biz dev to communications, like, but that had to be a lot of convincing yourself that you could do it.
Yeah.
When you're going up against someone who probably has 5, 10, 15 years of experience in the
Right.
industry.
Yeah.
Any tips on
Yeah.
how to do it?
Um, it's a good question. I think I won't say fake it till you make it because I think everybody knows that and everybody does that. But again, I think it's about like really understanding, and this is like the gimmicky word is like the transferable skills.
Mhm.
But I think that people, you know, it's not about the resume. It's not about like the titles and it's like, do you know what you're doing? And I think I always trusted that I knew what I was doing. I trusted that I always trusted that I would figure it out because I knew I was a smart person. So that's just comes from like confidence outside of the role, right? Like I come in knowing that I'm pretty smart. I can figure this out. Um, I think also coming from nonprofit where you're scrappy and everyone's just working and you have people who have master's degrees and
Mhm.
PhDs and they're all making $40,000 a year working on one project, like working on like one project side by side. So I think coming from that background too made me realize that like titles and all of that aren't the most important thing. So yeah, I mean, I think just it's not about like, am I good enough for this particular thing? It's just like, what am I good at? And knowing that
Yep.
unwavering makes it easier to know when you're in the right room. And even if like, yeah, like walking into a room and introducing myself as like the director of corporate marketing for AMC Networks felt like so silly for a while, right? Because I just was like, that is not at all where I was going or and like I said, I kind of skipped. I never was a manager. I was never an associate. I was never an
Uh-huh.
assistant. I walked right in as a director. But I knew I could do it. And I had put in years building skills elsewhere that were going to help me in that role. And they did.
Got it. And so one of the things you said that really stuck with me is the creative writing piece doesn't go away. You know,
Mm,
we all write scripts, we all write press releases,
mhm.
whatnot. Have you ever found yourself to just go too far down the creative path? Like you find something that you're like, like
Good
that
question.
just out of college, Ashley is like writing a script, and all of a sudden it's like in like a play script, I should say.
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden you're writing it in the first draft of your executive script, and you're like,
yeah.
wait a minute.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's why comms is so we have to answer to legal. We do have to answer to because especially like in when you're talking about a product release or something and it's like it's so fun. I get so excited and I can drink my own Kool-Aid. I can drink the Kool-Aid of the company and I could be like, this is this and that and that. And it does take a team to be like, no, no, like you have to use facts here. Like we can't like this sounds so nice and I wish we could say it this way, but you have to ground this in reality.
Yeah.
So for sure, like I definitely can, but I mean, that's part of the fun is kind of starting off really, really, really big, right? Like what is the best, most amazing headline, press story? What is the number one
Hmm.
thing that I want to be building right now? Start there and then let's chisel it down to like what's reality, but you still have like, I think a lot of the stuff that I get to work on is very exciting. But oh yeah, absolutely. Like some of the creative juices start going and I can definitely start to drink my own Kool-Aid. I mean, especially I think too, I don't know if you feel like in thought leadership where you're not as grounded in like
Yeah.
facts and you could just kind of really build on this like emotional like um it's like I'm not writing for Obama, right? Like I'm like
Right.
just but yeah, I get really excited and I think part of loving writing and loving that is it's a good skill to have because you do spend a lot of time writing some really dry stuff. And if you weren't excited about where it could be and where it could go and what's
Hmm.
next, then this is not the job for you, you know?
Yeah. No. I'm glad to hear that from a more creative person than I am because I find myself going a little too fluff, and then
Okay.
you got to
Yeah.
bring it down
Yeah.
to
Yeah. I
your
think we
point.
all do it because that's easier, right? It's easier to
Totally.
access the fluff than it is like, especially, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you were explaining that your background is a little bit more in like the technical world, like with
Hmm.
Nokia, like coming from modern dance to, you know, ad tech and DSPs and SSPs and like all of these like just phrases and you're like, what? Like the learning curve was really steep in
Mhm.
this role for sure. But as soon as I figured out the language, it's the same thing. You're trying to like you're still I'm selling an SSP or like it's a modern dance performance. You know,
That
tapping into the same skills.
we're gonna have to do a whole video on that because I would love to understand how you do that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about AMC for a little bit. Your
Yeah.
time there. Something I'm going to assume that you did. I think you actually mentioned this to me a while ago. Is you got to work with talent,
Mhm,
celebrities, stars, whatever you want to call them.
mhm,
Um, a lot of people don't get that opportunity in their
mhm,
careers.
mhm.
Any I don't want to say stories because I'm sure you can't share anything juicy,
Sure
but
can.
anything that like tips, any experiences that you think people can take away and apply to other areas, whether it's executives or what have you, that you just sit back and you're like, if I didn't do this with celebrity X or person X, I wouldn't know to do this with my current CEO.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny for me, especially with AMC, and I also worked at talent a little bit at BAM. So, like for instance, if we were doing a celebrity show, I'm trying to think, who I can name. Um, we had some celebrities on our stages, and our corporate sponsors wants like part of it's like we want to meet them. We want to bring our clients. We want to come. We want to have a very fancy dinner, and we want to have, drinks with Robert Redford. And you're like, all right, here we go. I think what is interesting about celebrity talent is they're people too, and a lot of them have their own business objectives and strategies. And so like I just found appealing to them for that purpose, like, hey,
Mhm.
like we need you to speak at advertising week, but this is going to be beneficial for you too, right? Celebrity is like their career, but that's their career. Like they
Mhm.
still have like their personal lives, and who they are personally is not always relevant. And so
Right.
it's really just talking to them and understanding the same way you would with any partner, anybody you're trying to do co-marketing with, or even like, a top executive that you have to support. It's like, what do you need to get out of this? What do I need to get out of this? And then how do we build the narrative that connects those things? Because I think,
Yeah.
it's especially in corporate, right? And I think that's where there are definitely PR teams at AMC that are like selling the shows, and I was never doing that. I was always using it for the corporate perspective. There's a separate team that was like taking them on their like PR tours for the shows, which I think is a different animal. And I just started to realize like that my real talent, my real celebrities were my executives, because those were the ones that were like
Mm.
Coleman Domingo wasn't an Oscar nominated person at the time, but he was lovely and wonderful and just a joy to work with. But like Kim Kelleher was probably bringing more of a crowd than he was at that time
Huh.
because of the rooms that I was in, right? It was about the business.
At the end of the day, whether it's a CEO or a celebrity who has a new movie out that's doing $1 billion at the box office, ultimately there has to be a mutual ground of
Yeah.
getting something out of it.
Right.
And treating someone like a person versus a talent, a
Right.
celebrity,
Yeah.
gets you that far.
Yeah.
It gets you in the door. It gets you where you need to be. It ends up with success on both sides. But that goes to your point. Like a lot of times the executive is the talent that we have to work with,
Yeah.
and they might have their own idea of success, and you got to versus what the calm success metric is. Figuring that part out and how you balance the two is exactly what you need to be thinking about.
I think working with celebrity talent, like the job stays very similar. But what I found was really interesting, and I think this is actually how it came up with in ARC, is that your relationship to media changes. So
Yes.
I have found that very different. Like that was probably my biggest like lesson of moving from entertainment into ad tech, is that when you have celebrities, you have a different leverage. It's going to be easier to
Oh
get on
yeah.
stages. It's going to be easier to get phone calls answered. It's going to be easier to get interviews, even if you're executives with them. But if there's a celebrity, it changes the equation because media's relationship to
Hmm.
celebrity is different. So even if your business relationship on your side is pretty standard, like you're going to get that reporter that you couldn't get to before, you now have new leverage. Whereas in moving to ad tech where it's not relevant, like why would I bring a celebrity? They would be like, what? Like there's none of that. And it's about, you are on stages, you are getting phone calls, you are getting pretty much based on like the merit of your storytelling and the
Uh-huh.
merit of your company. And like it's very hard to um smoke and mirrors any of that. And not that that's what we were doing at AMC, but like celebrities just got you in the room in a much quicker, better, faster way where that's gone, like journalists are not, it's a
Yeah.
different breed. It's a different breed of media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that goes similarly for smaller brands versus bigger brands.
Mhm.
I remember when I
Mhm.
first started my
Mhm.
career, I worked on much smaller brands than I currently work on or
Yeah.
have worked on later in my career. And the door just opens differently.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and they want to talk to people about different things that you don't even necessarily think about. They're more
Mhm.
collaborative. Media is just more
Oh, yeah.
collaborative.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, okay, I said X, you said yes or no. It's like, well,
Mhm.
why don't we talk about this? And why don't we turn it
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
way? And let's time it to this. And it's just a different relationship to your point.
Yeah.
Um, so PubMatic, I don't think a lot of people listening probably know what PubMatic is. So you might want to give a little bit of a background on it. Uh, but definitely curious. So you worked on AMC in the ad division of
Mhm.
the company. Now PubMatic's ad tech. Was it a dramatic change or was it kind of, like you said, it's a natural progression for your career, but was it a dramatic change in terms of understanding the business, going from one side of ads to the other?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was definitely a transition. So yeah, so PubMatic is a major player in the ad tech world, which essentially, they are building the infrastructure for a lot of these new ad formats and technologies, programmatic advertising. But I think they are really like the connective tissue to a lot of things that are going on in digital advertising. So I explain it to my family because they're like, "What?" Like, when I left AMC and they had no idea, and they're like, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" I was like, "You know how, like, you might Google a jacket or something, and then all of a sudden you go to wallstreetjournal.com and that exact jacket is being advertised to you?"
Uh-huh.
My company creates the infrastructure in which that happens. Like, we're not selling the jacket, we're not buying the jacket,
Yeah.
we're not even the ones necessarily taking the data and doing the thing. So that's what PubMatic does, right? Like, it's like the gravity of digital advertising behind the scenes. And I thought I knew what it was. Like when I was interviewing and talking about it and moving over from AMC to PubMatic, especially because I had spent a lot of time in our advertising function at AMC and talking about how innovative AMC was in their advertising and how they were bringing programmatic to linear and doing all these
Uh-huh.
really exciting things. So I was like, oh, I get this. I know what this is. And then immediately within like my first week at PubMatic, I was like, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea what this is. I don't want them to know that I don't know, but I'm
Uh-huh.
never gonna learn if I don't tell them. So I found like my like safe people at work and I was like,
Yep.
what does that mean? What is RTB? Like something that like now is so fundamental, or even like a DSP. Like I didn't know what that was. And I'm working in a
What
world
is
and
that, by the way?
so
Um, you're using acronyms that I don't know if anyone
so
knows.
SSP is a sell side platform, which means they're the ones essentially working with publishers and the websites and the TV publishers to sell their inventory. So they it's like a almost if you think about it like kind of like a brokerage. So that's sell side. And then you have demand side, which is that's kind of like the aggregate of the advertisers who are coming
Uh-huh.
in and saying, I want to buy advertising like this. So you've got SSPs and DSPs, and they communicate really obviously. Those are like the direct relationships. And now everything's kind of changing where like PubMatic, we have sell and buy side, and a
So
lot of DSPs have.
it's like an eBay or a two-sided marketplace
Yeah,
for advertising.
yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's very much a marketplace. Like it very much is very like uh, commerce all around, right? You're talking about selling. You have relationships with publishers who want to sell their advertising. We have relationships with advertisers who want the best possible inventory and tracking and measurement. And so what went from like just a simple basic understanding of like targeted advertising has now become like almost like an obsessive deep dive that I'm in all the time, thinking about like how digital advertising is sustaining so many economies and parts of the world. Like it's like I said, I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid because the deeper I get in, the more I'm like, wow, this touches everything. This touches everything. So like the learning curve of just what we were talking about, the scale, because again, when you're at one publisher, which is AMC, like your scale is your scale. Like that's it.
Mhm.
You can like again, a lot of it too was based in the art, was based in the shows, was based in the quality of, Walking Dead and Mad Men and
Yep.
Breaking Bad. Like there was still a lot of like the product was the shows and the artistry and the talent and all of that. PubMatic, the product is the product, everybody's product, right? The product is the whole digital advertising ecosystem. So it's been a whole different way of thinking, but it's been so exciting. Like I just love it. And again, like my friends who've known me since I've been, 24 and was like writing plays, like anti the man plays. And I'm like,
and
and they're
now
like,
and now you're a corporate.
yeah, they hear me talking and they're like, what happened to you? And I'm like, I don't know, but it feels natural. It feels like the absolute right place for me to be. I'm loving it. But yeah, if I like just step out of myself and think about like what I was talking about and writing about just 5 years ago, it's completely different from what I'm doing right now. Like
Yeah.
completely different. And so when I meet people, actually, I met someone who was like a vet. She was like an ad tech vet. Like she had her whole career, it was just like, she had brought all these companies through their IPOs. She'd
Mhm.
just been a part of like, and I was like, wow, I was like, that was somebody where I felt like a little bit of like imposter syndrome where I was like, "Well, I'm still figuring it out, but we're in the same room. So I'm doing something right."
You're leading comms and corporate marketing at
Mhm,
PubMatic. Let's
mhm.
talk a little bit about the corporate marketing side. What does corporate marketing actually mean? And what are some of the initiatives you've undertaken?
Yeah, so corporate marketing is a fun catch-all, I think, but is really important. I think of corporate marketing as like the big picture marketing, right? So we have product marketing
Mhm.
who are really focused on understanding that one-to-one relationship between the product and the customer and corporate marketing for me is just more of like, well, what is the air cover that needs to happen before a salesperson even enters the room, right? So like what's the social media presence? What's the general vibe? Like,
Mhm.
who are we as a company and like what's out there in the world? Like, how are we presenting ourselves to the investors? How are we presenting ourselves to future and current clients? How are we presenting ourselves to future and current employees? The media obviously is a part of that, which is why communications fits so well into it.
Okay.
It's the big picture. It's like when you think PubMatic, what do you think? And it's like right in your first thought. That to me is where corporate marketing lives, like
Got it.
funnel stuff. And then we kind of enable all of the mechanisms to start bringing people down the funnel, which then go into demand gen and then product marketing and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of think of it as like the very first air cover, like the bubble over the brand.
Okay. Okay. So take the employee audience for a
Mhm.
second. It's not too different than like what some people call employer brand or, recruitment communications, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's
Obviously, HR really runs the recruitment and everything.
Mhm.
But again, it's like, what are we doing that makes people even want to work for us so that
Right.
when they see PubMatic on a job description, they know who that is. They already have a sense of who we are. They want to work there. And then obviously like recruitment and everything kind of brings them more through the funnel.
So one of the things that I've been reading is a lot of new hires, recruits, want to work somewhere that's AI forward.
Mhm.
One thing that you've been doing is guiding the adoption of AI automation. Um, my first question is, how are you differentiating between AI and automation? Because there
Mm.
is this debate around AI agents that's not necessarily automation.
Yeah.
Um, and can you share any like efforts or initiatives that have actually like been implemented and what kind of results you've seen, even if it's anecdotal results? I'm not thinking data and efficiency and productivity numbers,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, we do have those. I should probably start memorizing those. just for my future talking points. AI is kind of all encompassing. Like there's a million ways to be engaging with AI, and there's levels, and just it's AI is like AI fluency is a major priority. And
Mhm.
I think, especially working in tech, right? It's like if we're going to say anything about AI externally, we need to know that we can back that up internally. We need to know that people know what they're doing. And so it's been a huge priority for a really long time. And so like I think automation to me is just one element of that. That's efficiency. That's just
Mhm.
like, what can we build? How can we make our lives easier in identifying these kind of like
Just
less,
simple tasks.
yeah, simple. That's a good way to call it. Like simple tasks, simple things that right now take a lot of manpower. How do we make that so that that is just a press of the button and we move on with our lives? But just simple things like our email communications, our pipeline development, our understanding of how to just engage with our customers in a way that leaves space for the high touch stuff, but automates the simple things so that like no one's getting tied up on that and things aren't getting missed. And so that to me is automation. And I think
Okay.
AI and AI adoption it's a whole new shift in thinking. It's like, almost everything I do now starts with an AI experience. Like almost everything starts with like either me going to we have our own proprietary like chat GPT for PubMatic. It's
Mhm.
PubMatic Brain. Usually starts there with me going like, I have an idea. What if I did this and what if I did that? And like, would this make sense? And I kind of brainstorm with AI first before I will bring it to someone in my team and say, here's what I think, because it just helps me figure that out quicker, faster. That is not automation, like that's just kind of
Yeah.
a different way of thinking. So I think we're all on this mission at PubMatic to figure out where AI is going to be unilaterally applied. And that's probably going to be a lot in the efficiencies and just kind of working faster, quicker. But I think we're all trying to figure out what is our like AI fluency? Like
Mhm.
where does it become part of how we work in everything? In an email, in a Slack, in a project brainstorm, in a campaign, and like all of that. Like it's something I'm thinking about constantly.
Yeah, no, look, no one's got it figured out yet, which
Yeah.
actually gives me a little bit of
Mhm.
reassurance when I'm throwing things against the wall. To your
Yeah.
point about brainstorming, I mean, I love the fact that you guys have your own PubMatic brain, I think you
Hmm.
called it, because at least then you have a sparring partner right off the bat.
Right.
No one's around, and you at least have someone with the institutional knowledge of the company versus like a ChatGPT enterprise model that may have connections to all the things. What you've described is built on the PubMatic information, and that allows you to kind of go deeper even before you started at the company and like get that kind of
Yeah.
information because it's built on whatever reams of data that you have.
Yeah. It's this closed circuit. I think we're also figuring it out. You still kind of
Of
have to
course.
learn how to be like a prompt master. I think people initially thought that like AI was just going to take over all writing. And then, yeah, right. It's like,
No, not
as
at
soon as
all.
you start to use it, you're like, this can't compare to what
No.
I'm going to bring to the table, but at least it sets me up five drafts earlier, right?
Hmm.
Like I'm starting better, but I'm still starting at scratch because that
Yeah.
is not what it writes is not
I,
what we need.
I say it cures blank page syndrome.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
my biggest like hang up is looking at a computer screen with a blank page, even
Yeah.
with like, okay, headline, subhead, like template.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and then at least
Yeah.
like you give it the right information, it can get to the right starting point for you.
Right. Right.
Um, so I hear you on that. And are there any agents that you all have built on the PR side? This is something I'm constantly thinking about is like, how can we use at an industry level
Yeah.
agents to actually make our jobs, whether it's more efficient. I'm going to use the word agent, but maybe it's automation. I like
Hmm.
to think of it as an agent because it's not like automating an email send or a calendar
Hmm.
invite acceptance, but like something that's going and continuously doing the work
Yeah.
and then alerting you proactively when it finds something. So, for example, I've been thinking about how do we actually, what would it take to build an agent that monitors social media And the minute there's a spike, it sends you a Slack message, or
Mhm.
a variety of people a Slack message with the here's what it is, like almost an Axios like kind of
Yeah.
brief. Here's
Mhm.
what it is. Here's who's saying it. Here's a couple sentences about who it is.
Yeah.
Here's how you can handle it. Here's the right media to reach out
Mhm.
to, that kind of thing. And it's proactively giving you that information,
Yeah.
but you know, it's got to
Yeah.
do the
No, I
work.
mean, I think there are tools that are there for, like, at the, like, the most basic level, right? Like, we use Sprout Social, that,
Hmm.
like, helps with that. But all it does is says, like, "Spike.
Right.
Go check this out, spikes." And it's like, "Okay."
Right.
And
It's a
then,
monitor. It's
right.
monitoring. It's not giving you the extra information.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question. I think definitely in 2026, we are prioritizing, like, building more internal agents to help on the marketing side. I think PubMatic has been very, very strong in building it from, like, an engineering, like, that's where
Hmm.
the efficiencies are gonna start, I think. We haven't started building anything yet, but I have some dreams. I definitely think, social media, anything that works with social media, I think is gonna be helpful. It's just it plays such a different role than it ever has before, and, like, these influencer conversations and
Yeah.
all of that, like, are so much more important and are so much more instantaneous. So I think you're definitely onto something human can't possibly be as tuned in and quick and responsive as it needs to be 24/7. I think also too, just like this, if I could find a way, if I could find an agent or something to just help with better sharing of information, because prepping people for different talking points or prepping people for different meetings, and they know 90%, but they're missing that 10%. And then my job is literally just to go get that information, turn it into, and, like,
Hmm.
it's like if that was not my job and I could actually just focus on the higher level, like, strategy and talking points and narrative building instead of literally just, like, research.
Yeah.
Like, "What do you know about this?" "Oh, copy paste. He knows this about that." Like, you know what I mean? It's like if we could just figure out a way to make sure that everybody can just be like, "What is this?" and get the information that they need,
Hmm.
that would be something that I think would really help with, um, the PR comms world. I mean, I don't know how many people spend their time doing that, but there's a lot of times where I feel like I'm just an information collector. But yeah, and I don't know. We don't have anything. I don't have anything in the works right now. But I definitely think it's worth thinking about, because it's like I think the real value that we bring to the company will always be there, and I think it's
Yeah.
just learning how to double down on that and then automating everything else so that we can really just kind of focus on, like, the real strategy I think we bring to a company.
Yeah. It's funny. I had this conversation with Katie Boyson, who hosts the Smart and PR podcast, or Smart and Public. Sorry, Smart and
Mhm,
Public podcast. Um, and her take was AI will never do the strategic thing,
mhm,
and I agree with her.
mhm.
But AI can get us to where we have all the information, the data
Yeah,
to inform and build and relay that strategy.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah. Um, okay, final question, and we do this for all of our guests.
Mhm,
If you were in front of a college class,
mhm.
or you were talking to 10, 15, 20 years ago, Ashley, what would be the one piece of advice you're giving her as you look back on your career, look forward, look at where you are?
Yeah, I mean, I think me 10, 15 years ago would have been sitting in a dark theater plotting out some crazy experimental script that would be at some black box fringe somewhere. And so I think, like, I don't know what I would have been receptive to, but I think not being like, you don't know where any of this is going to bring you, and be open to it. And I think I see that with people coming out of school now. I see that with younger people on my team. They want to lay out their career for the next 5 years.
Uh-huh.
They want to know that, well, what I'm doing now is gonna build on this, and then I'm gonna do that, and it's like, you don't know what's gonna happen, and you just do what you're doing now really well and enjoy that, and just trust that, like, what will happen will unfold in the way that it needs to. But, I see a lot of people, like, a lot of the interns that we had at, like, AMC, like, they want, "Well, how am I gonna, like, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna get there in 10 years?" And it's like, trust the process. What you're building for right now is not necessarily what you're gonna get.
Uh-huh.
And that doesn't mean failure. Not following the path that you're setting out on when you're 23 is probably, in my experience, a good thing. For other people, it has worked out and they've just kind of like emerged from school and have stayed in amazing careers. But like, that wasn't my experience. So being open and also being comfortable with the ambiguity of like not knowing where you're going to be in 5 years, that was something I think served me really well. I never felt like I had to turn down something or walk away from something because it didn't fit my vision. I just
Uh-huh.
was kind of like, well, let's see where this goes. And so I kind of just encourage that more in people. And I think too, like, bless their hearts, I think Gen Z is just under a lot of pressure. College is more expensive than ever. They're coming out of school with so much debt and they want to know that they're going to get that huge promotion in the first 3 years and that they're going to have this really successful career. And I feel for them, but that pressure is probably going to box them in more than anything.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for
You.
sharing your
It's fun.
journey. It's been a wild ride, I'm sure. You're realizing that as you
Knowing it
relate it.
has been one too, but yeah, no, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for your time, Ashley. Fantastic conversation and sharing your wild ride of a journey from business development and playwriting to communications.
Mhm.
Tune in next time for our next Comms Confidential conversation.